Hey there, everyone. Another day for another awesome episode. A couple things before we get into the rewrite related stuff. On a whim, I decided to try a 72-hour fast. That began on Monday evening. I thought, how hard could it be? Because I'm the type of person that likes to challenge himself, not to mention the scores of health benefits from such an undertaking. Well, it's not actually that hard. But boy oh boy, it's very annoying. As I write this script, I'm on the 50th hour, just starting day 3. And an unexpected outcome that makes sense in hindsight is that I've not really had the energy to write a script or do anything really. About a month ago, I said that on the next work holiday, I'd take time off from the rewrite to do other things. Well, that work holiday was on Monday, but I didn't take a break because of the excitement of the new arc. And due to various instances of foot shooting, I'm going to take Monday, May 27th off. I never like to deliver an episode unless I can say I'm proud of it, so I'm taking special care to make sure this is properly written. But I did sort of run out of steam, which, as you'll have already seen, will result in a smaller episode. Moving on. I think everyone enjoyed last episode, but I got a mixed bag of some people thinking it was awesome, and then others who didn't think very much information was dropped. To that second group of people, remember that episode. I think there's been a lot of events of this new arc that a lot of people are either taking for granted or just straight up missing. That last part is definitely true, at least to an extent. Already there have been details that no one's mentioned that are going to be long-lasting. Really adds to some replayability though, so I'm not going to complain too much. Last time, we saw Rock Lee and his adventures in an insanely different environment with people who had never heard of a ninja before. And we concluded with Ino reuniting with her father. Some astute listeners caught the little line at the start of the episode that Inoichi was on an S-rank mission. Retrieving Ino was that S-rank mission, since she was a Jinchuriki and heir to the Yamanaka clan, thus extremely important to the village. Inoichi was sent to Suna after Suna first sent a message to Konoha that they found Ino. So far, we've witnessed Shikamaru, Choji, Neji, and Rock Lee in this time skip experience, with Ino as the newest addition. It's fun to see people's predictions as to where the others ended up, or who we'll see next, and what kind of crazy changes have occurred to them individually. There are some obvious visual changes to those who have spent this time away from the village, but I wonder if there's anything different with Shikamaru. Just something to think about. But that wasn't meant to be a tease. But that might be what it turned out to be. Before I dig myself into a deeper hole, let's make sure to subscribe and all that jazz. Special thanks to Zetails from Discord for the insanely awesome reworked art of Ino Yamanaka and Rock Lee that you'll see in this episode. Seriously, even if you're strictly a listener, please try to take a peek when these characters come up, because they're just amazing. Hopefully we'll see more additions from Zetails in the future. Let's get this episode started. Choji is in the training grounds where he once was with Shino and Sakura, both missing in action. He's forming the habit of coming here at the break of dawn for personal training. The Akamichi clan have a vast land for him to do his training, but it was something about the village grounds that made him feel safer. His time away from the village had certainly shaped him in unexpected ways. Shikamaru seemed surprised all the time about Choji's new eating habits, but it wasn't just him. Choji was well aware of how little he was eating. Even his dad, who had been so over the moon since he returned to the village, was concerned for his well-being. Feeling his already growing belly, Choji was confused at the concern. Confused thoughts sucked away into the void as Choji placed his inner self into the deep recesses of his mind and looked up at the target in his path. He stood still for several concentrating minutes, and right as he's about to execute his morning practice, Rock Lee's voice calls attention to him. Just a quick aside, as mentioned previously, incredible thanks to Zetails in Discord for making this non-canonical, rewrite-friendly drawing of Rock Lee. He sports some of the colors and designs of his robes from training with the monks, but also of his original outfit from training with Might Guy. It's, in my opinion, a perfect fusion of respect for his teachers. Sorry about the distraction, back to the story. Relaxing his stance, Choji turns to Lee and greets him. Lee tells Choji that he heard his story, and Choji echoes his sentiment to Lee. Smiling at each other, Lee raises a hand to Choji in a silent invitation to spar. Back in the heart of the village, Konohamaru is dashing down the street in search of his sensei. What a guy. Sleep still in his eyes. He's getting awful tired of being a messenger boy for Lady Tsunade. But he's also heard that she's like the strongest ninja ever. So he's sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. What if she creams him for disobeying her? Leaping atop a nearby pole, Konohamaru starts exercising his lungs to do a screaming call for Shikamaru, but pauses and looks down below. Walking past on the ground below, a beautiful girl with blonde hair heads to the training grounds. Forgetting where he is, Konohamaru watches her until she's out of sight. Snapping back to reality and wiping away the drool, Konohamaru fills his lungs with all the air he can muster, turns in place, and shouts Shikamaru's name into the village as loudly as he can. Remember, it's dawn, as the nearby households wake up this early in the day and curse Konohamaru's name. Shikamaru slips through the shadows below and evades the kids' detection. Following after the girl, Shikamaru makes a stealthy trip to the training grounds. Emerging from the woods to watch Lee sparring with Choji, Ino lowers her hood and smiles at her childhood friend. Silently appearing at her side, Shikamaru can't help but grin himself as he relaxes against a tree surrounded by his once lost friends. Only Neji was absent, but if he was anything like he used to be, landing on one of the posts in the training ground, Neji silently observes his fellows in combat, squatting and bidding Shikamaru and Ino a slight nod. Smiling despite himself, Neji closes his eyes and bows his head and turns still as a statue. Ino had been back for nearly a month now, but due to the craziness of so many of the Konoha 12 returning so quickly, as well as missions, Shikamaru had missed a lot of opportunities to talk to her. "So," Shikamaru says, looking toward the rising sun, "where have you been?" Ino chuckles, continuing to watch Choji and Lee's undisturbed sparring. "A month passes before you bug me with that question. Tsunade's got me running missions with children. It's such a drag." Shikamaru rolls his eyes, using the children to excuse his absence. "A Jonin in charge of his own team now?" Ino asks, raising an eyebrow, but keeping her eyes trained on the sparring. "Hardly," Shikamaru answers. "With the losses we suffered against Iwa, there aren't very many Jonin available to train new Genin now. I'm just a stand-in until they can find someone." "I guess so," Ino answers, still cheerfully, though she understands the implications. "I heard what happened to Kurenai and Asuma. I wonder what'll happen to us." "Lord Hokage will figure it out," Shikamaru reassures her. "I'm sure if Naruto's still alive, it'll lift Lord Forth out of his funk." "But you're dodging," Shikamaru continues. "Where have you been?" "Through fire and brimstone," Ino jokes before finally closing her eyes and recounting exactly what happened to her. When Ino and Sakura first departed from Iwa, they thought there was no real obstacles in their flight other than being in an unknown foreign land. They could hear continued screams of battle echoing overhead, but could not tell whether that was from the fallen city or elsewhere. Following the chaos of those weird ninja appearing from Lord Orochimaru's point of disappearance, there was bound to be a lot of insanity. But the further they were from the epicenter of that chaos, then surely the safer they'd be. Following Ino's instruction, the girls make a beeline for the coast. But against Ino's expectations, it takes 2 days to reach the coast. Not only did it look much closer on a map, but she failed to realize how far her captors carried her. Additionally, now that they had arrived, there was a glaring issue. The first village they came to had been completely rebuilt. There were large flags over halls and larger buildings, as well as banners hanging from walls that all had a single musical note on them. This meant nothing to the girls, other than Sakura noting that the ninja that had popped out in Iwa had headbands of the same sigil. They could draw conclusions from this, but it wouldn't be substantive. Worst case scenario, out from the Leaf's invasion, this new force might be trying to take over, rather than simply defeat it like the Leaf. But Sakura bats her own suggestion away, convinced that this wasn't the case. Regardless, as they travel along the coast, the other villages have also been built back. In the course of the week that Sakura and Ino traveled near the coast to get to the Land of Grass, the smoke rising to the skies from the Leaf invasion had ended. Everything had been swiftly rebuilt, and it all seemed uncannily normal. In an attempt to evade attention, the girls travel around the village outskirts and only at night. It has slowed their journey substantially, but they don't want to take any undue risks. As they reach the third village, Ino remarks that the border is just a few hours away now, and once they cross that, it'll be a breeze. But their hopefulness dies away when they're caught up by a very large man. He remarks how he heard about 2 leafies fluttering around these parts, and sure enough, when he came to look, there they were. Turning to change direction, the girls find themselves flanked on all sides by the big guy's lackeys. Sakura tells Ino to run as she fruitlessly activates her genjutsu to create a cloud of Sakuras. Genjutsu, though, performed in front of the very people you mean to trick, rarely succeeds or goes unpunished. Telling Sakura they need to split up for now to divide the enemy's attention, Ino charges Jirobo, only for him to spin her about and slam her into the ground. She feels her chakra getting pulled from her as she lays in the dirt, and from the corner of her eye, she watches Sakura sprint away. "Forget her," the big ninja orders, and all but 3 of his lackeys turn their attention back to Ino. Despite her own situation, Ino continued to worry about Sakura. At least Ino had this emergency monster inside of her. Sakura had nothing. Gripping her by the arm, Jirobo is able to start sapping her chakra from the source, and at a very fast pace. Promising her that he won't release her until he gets his fill, Jirobo pulls and pulls until he breaks into a sweat. Releasing Ino suddenly, Jirobo snaps his hand back and looks at the burn that's formed across his fingers and palm. He started to pull so much out of her that the beast's chakra began to burn him. Only Jinchuriki are drip-fed this beast chakra so as to get used to it. Anyone else, and the chakra attacks them. Recoiling from the pain, Jirobo wonders why it happened as Ino shakily tries to run away. Well aware now that it's the Sanbi's chakra fueling most of her movements, Ino tries to keep her emotions in check in her attempt to flee. Collapsing on her, the other men attempt to pin her completely, but just as before, the Sanbi's chakra radiates from her and press into them like hot irons. As everyone falls around her, Ino gains the perfect opportunity to flee, and instead of continuing southeast toward the Land of Grass, she's forced to choose the easiest path to escape Jirobo and his gang. Though they attempt to give chase, it's only a few hours before Ino gains a solid lead. At this point, her heart is pumping hard, and she can feel the familiar shivers that usually accompany invasive action by the Sanbi. She figures that this is due to her own chakra being so depleted that it can't also keep the Sanbi chakra jailed. The sun rises, and she keeps right on running. And night falls again. She constantly feels the same amount of exhausted. It never changes as she runs, and though she was sure sleep would eventually take her, she continues to elude it. Ino thought that she would be hungry and thirsty, but she's neither. Her focus remains sharp as she runs. But she regularly hears ghostly sounds. They don't form into clear words, but they continually haunt her as she runs. Occasionally, she's sure these words are briefly crystal clear, but what they're saying doesn't line up with anything that's happened in the last couple days. She's also trying to keep herself distracted from them as she runs, as her worry for Sakura remains strong. Sakura ran in the complete opposite direction from Ino. There was little chance that they'd end up meeting again anytime soon, especially with that big guy with the rope around his belly between them. Eventually, she had decided to use this flight as a huge detour to circle back toward the land of grass and hopefully reunite with Sakura. It was difficult to tell direction here, with most of her landmarks being large boulders and weird trees that somehow grew out of them. But she had her training and kept pushing on. The hollow, ghostly echoes became clearer as she ran, almost as if she was a mouse slowly getting closer and closer to a behemoth beyond the horizon. Ino was sure that the Sanbi was responsible for her lacking needs. However, she was also confused as to why it clearly wanted to help her here. Meanwhile, before when it took her over, it didn't care a whit for what happened to her. The phantom echo deepens into a grumbling, and Ino realizes that the noise was coming from within. Go figure, from the Sanbi itself. Safe. The Sanbi echoes as she runs. What does that mean? She thinks to herself, aware that the Sanbi can hear her. You need to start communicating with more than one word. Ino notices while she tries to focus on talking to the Sanbi that her body is making movements on its own. Rest. The Sanbi lumbers again. Don't you go possessing me again, Ino warns, attempting to retake control of her body. The Sanbi took it so smoothly, she wondered if her physical exhaustion allowed it access more easily. Maybe it was hiding her exhaustion so that it could take advantage. Talk, you stupid turtle, Ino thinks angrily, struggling to shake the alien feeling of watching herself run. I will keep you safe, the Sanbi finally says, slowly, deliberately. Why? Don't you want freedom? Ino asks. You die. I die. The Sanbi relents, a note of defeat in its voice. So why not always cooperate instead of just possessing me without warning? Ino asks, relieved that her beast wasn't as basic as she thought. Freedom. Delicious. Prison. Lonely. Need. Fresh air. The beast mutters slowly. You can at least talk to me, Ino complains, finding herself sympathizing with the beast's predicament. As she's already been told, the Sanbi specifically has been used as a weapon in the hosts before her. To be forced into an existence where you can't move on your own for decades, while your every use is at the benefit of someone else, might as well be hell. As long as you don't go around killing people I care about, I'd be willing to trade places occasionally, Ino reasons, hoping that if it had some free time, it would be more cooperative on the whole. Hate, not people, the Sanbi rumbles. Hate, person. What person? Ino asks. Suddenly, in her mind's eye, an image of a person flashes into view. It appears to be a boy with unkempt, light brown hair, purple eyes, and a distinct scar running vertical along the left side of his face to his left eye. Ino has no idea who it is. When she tries to ask the Sanbi who it is, the Sanbi stops responding. Finally, after days of running, Ino comes across a shore and stares at it confused. She should have been in the land of grass by now. In water. Safe. The Sanbi rasps suddenly and without prodding. Feeling the familiar clawing at her throat, Ino tries to insist that they can do this cooperatively. However, the Sanbi likely has never cooperated with any of its hosts. Forced into being the inner thought again, Ino watched scared of the fully forming Sanbi as it slips into the depths of the water. You went underwater? Shikamaru asks, dumbfounded. For how long? Days? Weeks? I have no idea, Ino answers, unsure. But enough about me. I've been explaining this story to my family, to the Hokage, to a bunch of Jonin. Trailed off, fatigued by the whole affair. What about you, Shikamaru? What have you been up to? Well, Shikamaru chuckles, shaking his head. Not fire and brimstone. And that's the end of today's episode. Like I've warned already, there just wasn't a lot going on in terms of creative juices. However, if I wasn't pleased with this product, I wouldn't give it to you. And it was also a great opportunity to see the Konoha 5 naturalistically gathering together and just doing what they want in the morning. No doubt all of them have had a pretty sterile experience since returning, what with all the debriefing and people pestering them about where they've been. And of course, they all have holes in their stories so far. These are holes that I'll return to in the near future, worry not. Ino's initial experience was always planned to be pretty basic, but I couldn't have her running across a boring environment with nothing else going on. So we're going to see a lot of interactions with the Sanbi in her seclusion away from mankind. They're not really cooperating, but nor are they fighting, as the fox does with Naruto. Also, bringing it back to your attention, a third time, I think, I hope you liked the art that Zetails put out for me. It really makes me feel like I'm coming into my own when I have art that's based on my own fanfiction. That's just so cool. Sakura's now missing in action, even to the one person she was meant to be with, because it appears that the Sound is very much attempting to assimilate the land of Earth to their own likeness. Slowly but surely, we'll see what the Sound has done since their grand appearance, as all these different characters' stories are unveiled. And let's not forget that Shikamaru has been doing stuff all this time too that we don't know about. So that's what we'll be seeing next time, some of his hijinks. But, without further ado, let's end it there for today. The sky's the limit.